Hello, guys and gals, me Mutahar, and as you all know, I believe in your guys' protection of your privacy, your basic right. I want to ask you before we start off, I've made several videos about these topics, about the topic of your privacy. Are you okay with some guy or girl just sitting inside your house right now watching every single thing that you do? You don't know this person, they're just sitting there watching you, okay? They have carte blanche into walking into every private aspect of your life and looking at every single thing. If the answer to that is yes, then you're a crazy person. I would wager that most people watching this video appreciate their privacy, okay? When you come home, you close the door, you don't let any stranger just come in and watch you willy-nilly. Take tabs on every single thing that you do. Well, today the United Kingdom, wants to basically break into your phone, your private information, and look through whatever they want, pilfer everything. So, ladies and gentlemen, what are we getting into? Well, I want to start off with a little bit of an example. Do you guys know what encryption is? If you don't know what encryption is, I'm going to give you a quick example, all right? This is a nice phrase that I've written. So this is all in plain text. Just underneath that is this whole string of characters. This is the encrypted translation of what this phrase is. Now, this was done through a free text encryptor on the internet where I basically just threw this in, got this output, and of course, when I threw this output back in, it dropped me my actual unencrypted phrase. So the reason why I showed you this is when you send a text message to somebody over the internet, every time you type them out this phrase or whatever, and you send that message over, as that data packet is floating through the World Wide Web, that string of characters, that encrypted string, is basically all that's being flowed through. So if some hacker grabbed that, data packet that was floating through, that message in transit, all they would see is this string of characters. And the best part about it is, they will never know that that string of characters is whatever message you've written. That's how your privacy works. Now, generally speaking, most messaging services use something known as end-to-end encryption, meaning that your device encrypts it, and the only device that can unencrypt that phrase is your device, or in fact, the device you're sending it to, the end-to-end encryption. So nobody in the middle can see what's actually happening, whether that be your internet service provider, whether that be the people you bought your devices from, or, of course, any government agency, and especially criminal prying eyes. The only way that that entire situation gets ruined is when the government is basically allowed a backdoor into a system. So the United Kingdom had a few laws that were passed, I believe, last month. So this is the Investigatory Powers Act of 2016. This is on the legislative.gov.uk. Now you might be like, but Muta, why is this super important? Why are we talking about the United Kingdom? I don't live in there. Well, this affects the UK versus Apple. And chances are, if you use any Apple devices, which I suspect a grand majority of you do, you should be affected by any backdoor, obviously. So this is the technical capability notices, and of course, if you read through this, and again, you can read through all of this for yourselves, it's on the Government of the United Kingdom website. One of the interesting parts that came out of here was on Section 5, the obligations that may be specified in regulations under this section include, among many things, the obligations to provide facilities or services of a specified description, obligations relating to apparatus owned or operated by the relevant operator, obligations, this is the important one, relating to the removal of a relevant operator of electronic protection applied by or on behalf of that operator to any communications or data. So imagine if the operator is Apple, and the electronic protection is encryption on your device, or on any device backup that could be sitting on something like the iCloud. That is what is actually being targeted. And it's pretty scary because Apple actually did piss off a lot of government agencies by providing users with iCloud privacy back in 2022. So in order to know how we got here, we have to go into the time machine and revisit a case that I've talked about pretty much. It's kind of a landmark case when it comes to user privacy. Apple actually took the FBI to court over the December San Bernardino attacks in 2015. So according to this, again, case summary, just to give you an idea of it, the FBI was unable to access a locked iPhone, which was owned by the San Bernardino Health Department, but used by one of the perpetrators, and requested that the court order Apple to provide assistance in decrypting its phone. But see, at the time, Apple actually had no way to access an encrypted phone because, again, it was an encrypted device. All the information on it was locked away. If you buy an iPhone nowadays, or an Android phone, or again, a Windows tablet, or really most modern devices, generally they will all come encrypted, meaning that, nobody will have access to this device but you. Even Apple, if they wanted to grab your device, stick it into their system, because they don't have the decryption keys to access your device, they won't be able to. Meaning that if the FBI or anybody, Canadian RCMP for example, anyone, it's irrelevant who asks, they cannot open. So basically what had occurred over here, ladies and gentlemen, was Apple then ordered, the FBI asked for an order for Apple to create a custom operating system that would then disable a lot of those privacy features. Now, Apple had the opportunity, right? They could give the FBI the information, but they chose to fight them. And obviously the Apple company chose to fight the FBI because it would make them look bad, all right? Not only was it unconstitutional, it was unlawful, but I suspect they would face a serious amount of brand damage if all of a sudden, they just gave up your information without putting up a fight, right? Like, imagine if you're going to the store and you just, basically are buying a phone and you find out that, hey, this company that I'm purchasing my phone from, yeah, they just basically give up my information to any government agency, if they just get asked an order to. So obviously Apple had to stick up for not just their users, but also their brand and their image. And of course, ultimately, at the end of all this, the FBI had to go to a private security firm, like Azimuth Security in this case, from Australia, where they ended up finding a way to break through the passcode requirement. See, the issue was, if you, filled in a passcode wrong too many times on the phone, it would actually wipe the drive anyways. So these guys found a 0-day exploit to basically look through every single combination and unlock the phone for the FBI. And apparently it ended up costing the FBI, or rather the American taxpayer, $800,000, and it really gave nothing of value from what I understand. So money well spent right there, right? But yeah, that's kind of the long and short of one of the biggest privacy cases in, I would say, human history. Now, one of the loopholes agencies used was if they couldn't get into your phone, they could get into the iCloud, which is basically a constant revolving backup of your phone's information to Apple servers. Now, because this wasn't encrypted at the time, you could get an order for that and pilfer through the information and, generally get what you wanted to get without directly having access to the user's phone. Now, obviously, the end user is pissed because, hey, I thought this was supposed to be private. I did not expect a fucking loophole to exist where government agencies could just grab my information from the iCloud. So what happened in 2022, Apple made the advanced data protection for iCloud, meaning that if you go into your device and you go to, again, the iCloud settings, you can change it to advanced data protection, meaning that, again, what they'll do is they'll tell you, hey, you get a recovery key, which if you ever dealt with things like cryptocurrency, you know what I'm talking about. Basically, as long as you have this key, right, Apple can't unencrypt your backup. Nobody can unencrypt your backup except for you. So basically, you still get to use iCloud, but your information that's sent to iCloud is encrypted on their servers. And that means, again, if the feds or anybody wanted to get access to that information, or even a hacker would want to get into that information, they can't because they don't have the unencryption keys. Now, basically, the issue that comes out of this is that law we looked at from the United Kingdom. That law can be used to compel Apple to basically give up your information. They can basically ask Apple to generate a backdoor. Now again, the problem with the backdoor, obviously, if you're following along, is you cannot have privacy if there is a third key available, a secret backdoor. The way that encryption works is one person gets the key, it locks the system down, and hopefully nobody should be able to pilfer through your information. If a third key exists for the good guys or the government to get access to, that key can also be obtained by hackers. And then hackers can use that key to get into your information. So again, if you have a key for the good guys, the bad guys can also get access to that and use it against you, meaning that you're basically not using. You can either have complete privacy or you don't. Now, obviously, there was, government agencies were pissed. Like the FBI, in a broad sense, said this. This hinders our ability to protect the American people from criminal acts ranging from cyber attacks and violence against children to drug trafficking, organized crime, and, terrorism. Oh boy, the T word. The Bureau said in an emailed statement, in this age of cybersecurity and demands for security by design, the FBI and law enforcement partners need lawful access by design. I always love it anytime the government or the feds are always like, we need to protect people from spooky things like drug trafficking, organized crime, terrorism. What about the children? If the FBI gave a shit about the children, they would not be operating a fucking CP website distributing illegal material. Believe me, made a whole video on it called Operation Playpen. Disgusting shit. They were criticized for it. But Muda, they stopped bad people. I get it, but you don't commit a heinous crime in the process. You should, in theory, be above that. I don't think any of these agencies care about protecting, the kids. Really, it's about these agencies becoming the fucking Gestapo and overstepping and pilfering through people's privacy like this, okay? Remember, if you give any of these agencies an inch, they will take at least 100 miles, okay? We went from things like the Patriot Act all the way up to insane levels of privacy breaching that just the tiny amount that we have to fight like fucking hell to protect it. It's insane. It really is. So basically, the way that this kind of got blown open was apparently the United Kingdom actually demanded Apple to create a secret backdoor. And this was talked about by the Washington Post using that same technical capability notice that we talked about. And then, of course, there were more laws on top of it, too. Like, apparently, if you're ordered to do this, you can't even make a disclosure. Because I assume, and again, I'm not entirely versed legally in on this, so if somebody does want to correct me on the record, feel free to do so. But the way that this reads to me is obviously the government probably doesn't want you telling people, yeah, I've been ordered for giving them a backdoor, because that would probably freak out any real criminal, and then they would just start wiping out cloud backups and whatnot. But basically, they said any person who fails to comply with Section 57(1) commits an offense. A person who is guilty of an offense under this section is liable, on summary conviction in England and Wales, a imprisonment of a term not exceeding 6 months, or a fine. And I assume mostly it's all going to be a fine, but they've added in an imprisonment term from 6 to 12 months, depending on where you're at. So, yeah, in proceedings against any person for an offense under this section with respect to any disclosure, it is a defense for the person to show that the person could not reasonably have been expected, after first becoming aware of the matter disclosed, to take steps to prevent the disclosure. Okay, so they added in a little clause for the accidental disclosure shit. But this is bad, okay? Not only do they want a backdoor, but they want to make it so that it's basically criminal to tell people that, yeah, we're being compelled to give a backdoor. That's insane. Now, neither the government or even Apple has talked about it, because I'm sure based on some of these laws, they can't discuss this. But obviously, we're discussing it because it's important to have this discussion. Look, I know that some people don't give a shit about their privacy, and they're like, I don't care what I have nothing to hide. You're actually part of the problem, okay? You should not be okay with overreaches into your basic human rights. Remember, privacy is a basic human right. People have died for that basic privacy, that basic human right to be given to you. And if you're not fighting for it, it's just a disservice to how far we've made it as human beings in the modern world we live in to not at least fight for very basic privacy. Now, of course, if Apple doesn't fight this in any capacity, then it's going to be absolutely terrible for them. They should be fucking lambasted. But I think they will. They actually did talk about, again, them opposing this level of stuff too. So the IPA, which is not, again, referring to the beer, it's the Investigatory Powers Act, right, according to Ars Technica, they wrote, the IPA's existing powers are already extremely broad and pose a significant risk to the global availability of vitally important security technologies. Under the current law, the UK government can issue a TCN. that seeks to obligate a provider to remove an electronic protection to allow access to data that is otherwise unavailable due to encryption. In addition, the SOS, Secretary of State, has been granted the further authority to prohibit the provider from disclosing any information about such requirement to its users to the public, which again, it's like literally secret fucking Gestapo shit. Moreover, the IPA purports to apply extraterritorially, permitting the UK government to assert that it may impose secret requirements on providers located in other countries and that apply to their users globally. So you can't escape it even if you're out of the United Kingdom. But also, I don't think that the UK could ever do this to like maybe a non-UK citizen, but I'm not even sure. These laws are weird. And thankfully, Apple seems to be against this, and they are fighting it again. Not just for you, but obviously for their own brand image as well, too. And mind you, recently we just had China, and still have China looking through our telecommunications stuff, to the point where the literal FBI is telling you, hey guys, encryption is suddenly cool and base now, please use it so at least the Chinese aren't getting your information. It was okay when we were getting your information, but definitely not when the Chinese were. I mean, it's a fucking joke when you're dealing with this stuff, man. Because, like, government agencies, especially law enforcement agencies, get so fucking bricked up. Like, the hard-ons you're seeing could never be reached by Viagra or Cialis that come from federal agents given the ability to, like, look through your information. And again, you might be like, I have nothing to hide. I have nothing to hide from anyone. It doesn't matter if you have nothing to hide. Give these guys an inch, they take 100,000 miles. Now, obviously, you know, you could be like, does this affect things like Android? Does this affect things like, again, here's the thing. It wouldn't matter what your cellular device is. Again, it could be a company like Samsung. It could be a company like Microsoft. It could be a company like Google. It could be anyone. You know, the point is, if you are storing people's data off-site, then congratulations. Under these laws, you can be compelled to basically give up information. Now, here's the thing. I do expect companies to fight. Obviously, I do expect to, because this is a direct, actual assault on user privacy. In fact, it's probably the biggest assault that I've seen, especially the way that it's been written. Now, obviously, before we end all this, I don't think there's much more that I can say other than you should be genuinely worried that a government is again trying to overreach like this. But if you're genuinely now worried about your information being backdoored, especially through off-site backups, then maybe it's time to get into things like self-hosting. So I think sometime this month, I've actually even mentioned it on my own subreddit. Somebody asked me to make a video about, like, you know, self-hosted servers, things like, you know, your own servers at home, something of that nature, something that I myself do every single day. I've done this for over a year. And I think I have to expedite that video because, generally speaking, I might have to redo things, especially considering now we're bringing cell phones into it. If you genuinely feel that, you know, you don't want to trust anybody, like you might not know that Apple may give up your information, they're compelled to, then maybe it's time that you get into things like self-hosting where you're running your own version of the iCloud or your own version of a backup server where, yeah, it's not as convenient as using something like Google Drive or iCloud or anything, you know, convenient, right? But at least it's running on your servers, your hard drives with your encryption, meaning that at the end of the day, all right, no matter what, nobody should be able to compel you to give up your privacy, your personal information, all for the sake of fighting against criminals and terrorism and child traffickers and the evilest dregs of society. Look, there's really bad people out there, and I am totally fine with the government cracking down on them. But at the same time, I am also never okay with the government actually cracking down on your basic right to privacy, your basic human right to having some level of privacy in your life, just for the sake of quote-unquote stopping bad people. And I also don't trust the government or any private company to be looking through your information and, again, just storing it and using it for whatever extraneous reasons, okay? Look, maybe I've watched way too much shit like Minority Report, read way too much 1984 in my life, but in the world we live in right now, okay, information flows and hits servers every single day. There's no avoiding it, okay? But having just the most basic level of privacy, and we're just talking about encryption here, okay? Your private photos, your private messages, your emails, the relationships you've cultivated in your personal life, stored on a server for backup purposes, that shouldn't be allowed to look through at all by anyone except you and the people you trust. Simple as that. And if that means sometimes you make things harder for law enforcement agents against cops, or not against cops, but against the bad guys, I think that's okay, all right? Because throwing the baby out with the bathwater, aka your privacy and your basic rights, is never okay, all right? Maybe the cops have to work a little bit harder, but tough fucking shit, to be honest with you. Privacy is a no compromise thing, and I've talked about this damn near 9-10 years, numerous times throughout my channel, since the very beginning. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Dislike if you dislike it. I am out.